Well, I am thrilled beyond belief, and I mean that sincerely. It's truly a pleasure to welcome Emily Lape to the Kicking the Seat podcast to talk about a number of different things. Foremost on my mind, though, is Relative, one of my favorite films of 2022, written directed by Michael Glover Smith and starring you, Ms. Lape. And it's going to be showing at a special screening at the After Hours Film Society this coming Monday in Downers Grove, Illinois. So I'm going to have tickets and all that good information down in the description so you can check that out. Emily and Michael, and also co-stars Melissa Dupre and Elizabeth Stamm are going to be there for a post-screening Q&A, which is going to be hosted by David Fowley, friend of the show and dear friend of mine. So yeah, it's going to be a big night coming up next week. So in the meantime, we're going to get to know you a little bit here. Emily, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel so honored to be on your show, honestly. A big fan. I discovered you through the Relative review you and David did back in I think June, and then went on to go and listen to many more reviews and shows. So it's nice to be on here.
Well, I'm glad you agreed to come on here after listening to many more shows. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this because I watched I had hosted a screening of Relative back in June, and you were supposed to be at that screening, but you weren't able to make it for various reasons. So I was doing my homework in preparation for that, and I discovered Mercy's Girl, which David had recommended that I check out. And I was blown away by it. So to have this opportunity to kind of talk to you one-on-one outside the context of a Q&A with other people and stuff is great. So let's start with Mercy's Girl. That was a 2018 film that you did, and you wrote it, you directed it, you starred in it. I imagine you maybe wore some other hats. You started off as an actress, and this was your feature film debut. So can you tell me a little bit about how you made that transition? What inspired you to take the leap and become a filmmaker?
Yeah, well, um, yeah, I had been studying acting in Los Angeles for about 8 years. And I always kind of knew I wanted to write and direct, but my main focus was on acting. So I did a few feature films, TV shows, commercials, etc. And then when I turned around 30, so about almost 10 years ago, I kind of knew I was done with LA. I was ready to move out of there, and I had a couple siblings living in Chicago. And so I moved to Chicago. And then shortly after that, I, started looking at, okay, what's the film scene here? And then this is the perfect place to do my own film for the little budget that I can. So I always knew I wanted to. It just wasn't my focus in my 20s. So the 30th birthday was the light switch for me, where it was like, all right, it's kind of now or never. Let's start this.
So you had relatives in Chicago, but you didn't grow up here. Am I understanding you right?
Yeah, I didn't grow up here. I had a sister and brother that live here. But I kind of grew up all over. My father was a pastor and a missionary pastor several times. And so we kind of moved, I mean, from like, where I was born to when I finally left my parents' home, I probably moved like 16 different times. So I didn't grow up in Chicago, but since then, I have fallen in love with the film community here, and it's really changed my perspective on filmmaking from Los Angeles to here. It's just really different. So
Well, I want to come right back to that, but I just have to say, watching Mercy's Girl, it's I believe you, but I find it kind of unbelievable that someone who isn't from here really captured the spirit of the city. Michael Glover Smith, Nick Alonso, Claire Cooney, those are, some of my favorite local filmmakers. And what I love about their movies is that, you know, big budget Hollywood productions like you might see out of LA, they show Chicago and it's usually just like the big establishing shot and then there's high rises or whatever. The filmmakers I love, the indies, they go to the places that, Chicagoans recognize, but everywhere else be like, where is that place? I got to go there. That seems like a really interesting character filled city. So congratulations for capturing that. It's remarkable.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's the same thing even with like tourists and stuff like that. You have people that come and visit. You're just like, let me show you the neighborhoods. Let me show you some of these other places than downtown and Navy Pier. And so I had been visiting quite often because my family lived here for holidays, and I fell in love with the neighborhoods, not necessarily downtown.
So tell me about I think a lot of people watching this might have their kind of ideas about when you say the difference between LA and Chicago as far as a film scene, because there's sort of a cartoonish, not to say unrealistic perception of, the big Hollywood machine and, everything from like, budget craziness to Me Too stuff kind of being a cesspit of the world's not greatest people making, product instead of art. Uh, was that your experience, or was it some other kind of motivating factor that said, I gotta do something different as far as the film career?
I mean, I would like to say that wasn't my experience, and I think as a whole, I wouldn't classify it as that type of stereotypical LA cesspool kind of thing. It was a different time also when I was there. I was there before the Me Too movement. So I left in 2012. So um, it was honestly those stereotypical adjectives. But it at the same time, there is community there. It's a little bit harder to find. It's so transient, and because it's a one industry town in a way, it's hard to get away from it and get outside of yourself and this ambition. I mean, there's an energy there. That almost feels like pure ambition. It's less artistic feeling to me. Where here, I feel like there's more exploration in an artistic way. Where there, I feel like there's just this heavy energy of ambition. So that's the big difference that I noticed. But so I mean, if you want to work, you can work any day of the week there. You can get, if you work on crew, you can get any type of gig position you want. You can work for a studio. I mean, you can work on anything. And acting same way, with a little bit of hustle, you can work. Here, it's not really the case. You can put a lot of hustle in, and there's just not enough work happening. But yeah, LA.
Do you find, just in working, kind of coming back here and putting the film together, and then, you're living out here, have things changed, in the Chicago scene? As you mentioned, things have kind of shifted in Hollywood over the last, almost decade. Do you find that there's any kind of change on the Chicago film scene, either, in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, I would say the biggest change that I've seen in Chicago has been more of a positive. Um, there's more connection and community. I mean, there's just so many ways to get involved. And when I first moved here in 2012, I would say it was like harder to find those avenues. And I think now there's just more opened up. I think there was just like Chicago Filmmakers, which was on the north side. And it was one of the only places you could, if you were interested in filmmaking, get, take classes or get involved in some way. But now there's just like so many different film clubs. There's so many networking events. There's like Cinema Femme, which is a fantastic, magazine that celebrates female filmmakers. So I think the positive is that it's continuing to grow and building upon itself, and it's very inclusive, which is nice.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I am friends with Rebecca Martin Fagerholm now, who founded Cinema Femme, and I was actually reading an interview that you did with them from a couple of years ago, when you mentioned that your father was a pastor and that kind of, moving around a lot. Kind of transitioning into the Mercy's Girl conversation. In that interview, you mentioned that your dad was a pastor, but your parents were kind of hippie-ish, right?
Yeah.
It occurs to me that watching Mercy's Girl and then Relative, there's almost that dichotomy of the strict religious upbringing in Mercy's Girl versus the hippie-ish, ultra progressive, caring family in Relative. And you were straddling kind of both of those worlds. So I don't want to get too personal. There's nothing you want to, share, but, how autobiographical was Mercy's Girl, when you were writing it and decided to put yourself into it? It feels like a very personal film. but did you draw an real experience for that, or did you just invest this fictitious story with kind of everything that you had?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I mean, I only had about 20 grand to make the feature film. And so I said to myself, what themes do I want to explore? And what genre can I even make? So it was like a narrative feature, that's a drama, that's something that I want to explore. And then I looked at like sexuality and religion has always been fascinating for me. And when I wrote Mercy's Girl, it was before same-sex marriage was legalized, and at that time there was a lot more repression. That's almost 8 years ago, but it does stem from my own experience with religion and the stigmas around sexuality, just not even about homosexuality, which Mercy's Girl has, a big part of it is her coming to terms with her own identity, in a her own sexual identity, excuse me. But just in general, like sexuality and religion and Christianity has always been fascinating for me. So yeah, it did come a little bit from my childhood and being involved in the church and going to church several times a week and feeling, I mean, even I went to all Christian schools mostly until high school, and just the stigmas around being a female and what the females could wear and what the males couldn't wear, and all those kind of weird things. And it kind of played on my child mind, and then as an adult mind, I wanted to explore that and test that a little bit with my own art. So
Yeah, I mean, when you finished the film and you kind of, I don't know if your parents are still, alive. Were you able to show them the movie? And what did they, what was their kind of reaction to it?
well, my father is no longer a pastor. He, in my teenage years, he moved away from that. He's still a very spiritual man. Both of my parents are. I would say they still identify as Christian. And my mom grew up in a strict Catholic home. But I did show my mom. It's hard because there's nudity in it and there's sex scenes. And so it was kind of graphic in the way that a lot of my family members didn't want to watch it. But they knew what the storyline consisted of, and they seemed to be supportive of it. We didn't have too many discussions, but it seemed supportive.
I, it sounds like you come from a supportive family, which, your character in that film, Mercy, does not. And, watching the movie, it's just kind of strange for me to talk to you about the film, because that was my first kind of experience watching you really in a movie. And I felt like I was watching a real person going through some real things. I kind of wanted to give your character a hug at the end and say it's going to be okay. Because you're right, you do put yourself out there as that character. You Mercy is coming into her own sexuality, admitting it, more to herself, and eventually to the people around her. But that struggle comes with different things, such as alcoholism, sort of this aimlessness in terms of a career, not really feeling like she fits in anywhere, and also, leads to a relationship that she kind of, sabotages in a way. And you as a writer and a filmmaker and as an actress, you are not merciful to Mercy. It doesn't, wrap up everything with a nice, pretty bow. Was that a decision that you had made when you sat down to write the story, or did you kind of come to develop the character and decide, okay, it could have a nice happy ending, but this feels a bit more authentic? Or what was your thought process there?
Yeah, I think just like Relative, the ending gets a lot of questions, and the same with Mercy's Girl, it does too. And I mean, I did plan to bring truth. That was my goal, was to bring as much truth as I can to any acting that I did and any storyline or where the progress of the story went. But yeah, I mean, I think Mercy's Girl is really about her finding her identity and not about having a happy ending relationship kind of thing. And so I think the catalyst in the movie is Jesse. It transforms Mercy, and she shows her love. But I think ultimately what Mercy needed was, to love herself, or to find her own way out of it without that extra crutch,
Mm.
Jesse. And so I wanted, if anything, if she ended up, what, I'm giving a spoiler away, but it's been out for years. So if she had ended up in that relationship at the end, I feel like then her journey wouldn't be as complete, and in my point of view as the writer, because I think she needed to be on her own at the end. But
Right, and it's the kind of decision, the kind of ending that I think you would see more in an independent film, something that's coming from a genuine voice rather than, I'll say it again, a Hollywood product. Because as the movie was going along, I got the feeling that this does not feel, not that there's going to be a downer ending, but it doesn't feel like something that's going to be neat. And I was sad and also happy at the end of Mercy's Girl. I'm like, that I don't feel good inside, but I at least feel like I'm watching something honest.
yeah, I know. I think about that a lot, how I could have maybe given a little bit more hope at the end. My hope was that that the audience would see how much progress she had made in her life. And I've thought about many different ways I could have ended it, because later, after you're done making it, you get feedback. And even though I feel like my films that I make are more about like a self-expression, than I would say like something that is, it's not like I'm not a career director, you know what I mean. I just like, I do it for myself, and it's a self-expression. But you do get feedback, and you do see those reviews where people are so upset about the ending. And so I've thought a couple of times, like, how could I have done that in a softer way, maybe? But
Well, I mean, yeah, I haven't read those reviews. I feel like the movie that you wanted to make, obviously you made it, and it's probably a testament to the way that you put it out there, that you're affecting people enough to say, this, I was pulling for this character. This is, come on. Um, but one thing that I've got this weird habit of paying attention to what characters read in movies, because I'm always curious as to, is that just a prop, or is the writer director trying to tell me something? Mercy was spotted with a copy of Sam Shepard's Motel Chronicles in the film, and I actually, I hate to say this, I paused the movie on Amazon and I ordered on Amazon a copy of Sam Shepard's Motel Chronicles. That's what it is, Motel Chronicles.
yeah.
Um, and I read it. I finished watching the movie, and then when the book came, I read it. And it's great. It's like short stories and poetry from like the late 70s and 80s, from this great writer. I want to know, what was your connection with that particular collection, that you felt you wanted to feature it in the film? Or was it just, hey, I need a prop, I've got this book?
I am so glad that you ordered it. It's such a lovely piece of work. It was given to me by my sister, like in 2008 or something like that. And it was a book that I took with me on set of my first feature film called Gaia, which was shot in Arizona. And it is, you're right, it's about poetry and short stories and stuff like that. But it's kind of just always ties me back to that, like self-expression, or like a person's journey. And I just love it. And so now I carry it. It's probably going to make an appearance in all my films, but but I'm glad that you ordered it, and that you like it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. It is one of those books that you can't really get a handle on it until after you're done, because everything is so different. He'll go from, an 8-page short story to a couple of, poems, and talk about a guy who did not like Hollywood. His meditations on Tinseltown, usually they're like less than a quarter page long, and it's like, everybody here is fake and they suck, but in a much more elegant way. Um, so when it comes to Relative, how did you get involved in that, with Michael Glover Smith? and the character of Norma, who I think I wrote about this in my review, and I talked about it with Fally, is a deceptively complex character, at least in terms of the amount of screen time and attention her character gets. On first glance, she gets short shrift in the story, but I think she says her character and how she's treated says the most about what is going on in this family dynamic. And I don't want to spoil, anything really for those who haven't seen it, but I'm curious about how you got involved in the film and the creation of this character of Norma.
Yeah, so I met Michael. I mean, Michael is the great connector of Chicago film in the Chicago film scene. He's just he's such an advocate, and he really just loves. I mean, you meet him in person and he's just like, "Have you met this person?" And I'm the biggest fan. "Have you met this person?" And he just connects people. So he, I think, saw my film at a film festival in Chicago, Middle Coast Film Festival, and contacted me and said, "Hey, can we get coffee? I want to talk to you about your film." And so we became friends, and that was in 2000, I think 18 or 19. Became good friends, and we just met up periodically for coffee. And then, I mean, like how it is in the indie scene, you just whenever you have a bunch of different scripts and whatever you can get the financing for, that's probably what you're going to make next. And so he had a couple of different films that were in the works, and I had some films in the works. So he had told me about this ensemble cast feature film about a graduation day and how everybody comes back together. Um, and so he sent me this. He was like, "Oh, and I want you to act in it." I just clearly remember that over coffee, and I want you to act in it. And it kind of just was like, "Oh man, I would love to work with Michael, and I'm a big fan of his, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to act." And then the conversation, happened over time, over a couple years, or over about a year and a half. We'd just meet and I'd hear progress about it and stuff. But originally, I was reading for Heather Chrysler's role, who plays Rod's ex. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously Heather, that role was totally meant for her because she's such a powerhouse in it. And he was seeing me more towards Norma. So he was like, "I'm not finding anybody that's really fitting Norma. Do you want to read for Norma?" And I was just like, "Michael, I am like not sure if I want to act again and all this stuff." But yeah, so we ended up just having more conversations, and then ended up getting casted as Norma. And I was a nervous wreck and had so much anxiety, but it was a great experience to see Michael on set, if anything. Yeah.
So you said that you really didn't want to act again. Was it because you had, let me ask you about that. Let me dig into that, because you had done Mercy's Girl. This was after that. So, and it took a couple of years, you said, to for Michael to kind of get this together to the point where he was talking about auditioning you and all of this, because it started off over coffee, whatever. "Hey, I want you to act on this." And then you're like, "Okay." And then eventually it kind of circles back around, but you had some doubts about getting back into it. So what were those doubts?
Well, I think I was still building. So going back to LA and what we talked about earlier, I had some not so great experiences in LA with acting. Um, and I'll be careful about what I say because
Sure.
of stuff, but I had a pretty traumatic experience on set and had to try to get help, and then had to eventually go on tour with this person. Basically, it was like an assault type thing happened. And then had to go on tour with this person to promote this thing that I did. And so at that point, I had been in LA for 7 or 8 years, and it pretty much broke me. And so I said I wasn't going to give anybody that power again. Like, I love acting. I love, the to push myself and to go there and to bring it and everything. But I was just didn't think I could ever trust another filmmaker again. And so when I came here, when I made Mercy's Girl and came to Chicago, I it was like building that trust with myself again. and building that trust with my talent, and to see if I could, be okay with it again. And so then when I met Michael, I felt really, I mean, I knew him for years and I really trusted him. And so I feel like with Michael, it was more about trusting someone again. And so that's why I was really hesitant. And a lot of people will say like, "Oh, you retired from acting," and kind of thing. And it wasn't necessarily a retirement. And I mean, I did an interview with Matt Fagerholm, Rebecca's husband, for
Yeah.
Indie Outlook, where we talked about this, about how these things happen, and even if you love acting or you love filmmaking, it can traumatize you, and you lose a lot of talent that way. I mean, and so yeah, how I decided to trust Michael, and I had anxiety about it, but it was such a great experience. He really changed my perspective and gave me a positive experience, so I really appreciate him for that.
Um,
It's a lot on you, Ian. I'm sorry.
no, it's just, it's heartbreaking because, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, the stereotypes of Hollywood, people going out there to find their dreams and end up, having, horrible things happen to them, whether it's just, a lack of professional success or, being taken advantage of or whatever. And so, I'm glad that you were able to come back from it and, fight through those demons and find supportive, creative people to sort of help you believe again. But then I'm thinking about, Mercy's Girl. There's that scene in a bathroom, and I won't spoil it because I think people need to see this movie.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm trying to think of how you got into that headspace to write that scene, commit to shooting it, and shooting it with an actor who had to pretend to do something that, to me, it was hard to watch. I mean, that stuff's never easy to watch, but there's such a, verite to the rest of the film that it looks like someone yelled cut and then just kept filming as something horrific happened. I'm rambling and I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm upset on behalf of the past and possibly present, hopefully not future you. And I'm glad that you're okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about something positive.
Yeah.
Uh, Relative. Um, just to kind of jump ahead, do you feel now that you've had this positive experience that you want to continue acting or to kind of, step back into it or
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. My headspace is all about my next feature film. So that is where which I'm not acting in, is where my head is at. So I am open to acting again, but um yeah, I get, honestly, it's very strange. I do get scripts sent to me. Like, people will see one of the first films I'm in, or they'll see Mercy's Girl, and they'll be like, "Oh, she's the one that can do this really rough role." This where somebody gets raped and beat up and tossed around and can deliver that drama and that truthfulness in that. But I will say every single one of them I say no to. So I'm open to other kinds of roles, I guess, for acting, but really I'm focusing more on directing right now. Yeah.
so I do want to get back to relative, but we keep going down these avenues that I don't want to forget because I've been up since 4 o'clock and I haven't had nearly enough coffee. Can you
Oh
believe it?
no.
But it's just a typical day. Um, but so you got something in development that that you're working on now. Am I understand that right?
Yeah, I do. Like I said before, when I was talking about Michael, you always have something going, and it's just like, what can I get money for? What can I, get green lit so that I can make something? And so, yeah, I have a feature film that I'm so excited to shoot. It's a supernatural um, feature film. I'm hoping to shoot it in New Mexico this fall. We'll see what happens, but I don't want to give too much away about it. But the premise is really interesting, and it's going to be shot similar to Mercy's Girl, where it's very, like, almost voyeuristic or documentary style, very natural lighting. But yeah, I'm working with kids for the first time, in the beautiful landscape of New Mexico. So yeah, that's where I can't wait. I'm so excited.
So is it something you wrote and are directing as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
All right. Well, when you can share more, or when the movie's out there or whatever, I definitely like to talk to you about it. I'm intrigued. Um, but so getting back to Relative. Now, we've been kind of talking about this. For those who've watched this channel, you've probably heard me talk about the movie ad nauseum. But for those who are kind of new to this, maybe it is a sort of a dysfunctional family reunion film that takes place over the course of basically a weekend. A number of siblings in the Frank family come home to Rogers Park to see Benji graduate from college, and he meets a girl, brings her to the party, and but there's all of his siblings who have different are in different places in their lives with different relationships, and a lot of things come out over the weekend. Um, and it's a comedy, it's a drama, it's very good. And you play Norma. You make the trip from, it was Iowa, right? Is that right?
That's right.
Um, okay. And you kind of leave. We don't see very much of your life outside of this family reunion. It looks like you leave a husband and a child behind to come to this family gathering. You kind of go back to them at the end. You're talking to your parents when you can get a free, a couple of moments away, about how things used to be, and you wish you could kind of get back to that when everyone kind of younger and more together.
Right.
There does seem to be a something's going on in Norma's life, that because of all the other out in front craziness that's going on with everyone else's drama, is getting pushed to the back. And instead of this being a shortcoming of the screenplay, it is more of this idea of, well, there's sometimes some people in the family, their problems get pushed aside until later. This might happen. There might be another weekend where it's all about you, but that's not this weekend. So in developing this character, how much did you develop kind of a backstory for what is going on in Norma's life with Michael? Did you do that to prepare for how you're going to portray, you know, Norma as you do?
Yeah, me and Michael had a lot of talks about, what either her home situation was, or home situation is, and also just what her inner life is like. Um, so it might not even be what's happening at home; it's what's her point of view on, or expectations about life. And as you get older, maybe it's a little different. So we had quite a few conversations about that. Um, but it really, what blew me away the most about working with Michael is he knows all the backstory for each character. And yes, there's room to develop it as an actor, but even the names, like he named my character Norma because she appears to be the most normal of the siblings, so he thinks about everything. And that's why he also shoots so fast. I mean, we're on set and he can just get, things, we just move so fast. You think he shot it in like 10 days, and it's just because he's thought of every single detail. And you wouldn't think that, because you're just like, he's just such a nice guy, he's easygoing, he's not overbearing. As a director, he's not in there like pacing and controlling and barking orders, trying to get things moving. He knows, and he's relaxed, and he's smoking a cigar. And so, yeah, we did just a little bit of discussion about her backstory, especially about the ending of it, of what was happening there. Yeah.
um, Kind of, it's weird because like you, Michael, and now Claire Cooney are all working on projects that have something to do with not necessarily the supernatural, but like kind of, well, yeah, I guess things that are outside of nature, very weird things. I think Michael has written a horror movie or something, if I saw on Instagram right. Was there something in the water, or did you make some kind of a bet on the set of Relative? Like,
I have no idea. I think it's just like a genre you want to explore, and it's not something you think of in the indie world at all.
right.
So And that's what is exciting about it. I don't know about them or when their progress, or when it began for whatever they're working on now, but mine was years ago. And I think, yeah, maybe there is something in the water. We talked a lot on set. I mean, you get a bunch of filmmakers that aren't just actors that are, also filmmakers. There's a lot of shop talk.
Well, that's, I want to ask about that too, because you've got filmmakers who are collaborating on making a movie, but there's sort of one filmmaker, one visionary at the helm, as you mentioned, kind of making things happen. And even though it's a very friendly kind of environment, I wonder, was there any kind of collaboration, or I don't know who else on the cast might have been, filmmakers besides you and Claire, but did Michael, ask input from you? Did you learn things from him or from Claire that you might be taking to your next project in New Mexico?
Well, I think Michael and Claire were really interesting to watch on set because obviously they'd worked together a couple times before. And they're both, directors, writers, and they're really close as well. So they have that like secondhand language. I don't know. They have their own way of speaking. And Claire has just such a sharp eye for movement in a scene and cinematography and the details. Like Claire's very detail oriented. It's incredible to watch her. Like, so we'll start blocking a scene and she'll just be like, hey, yeah, he should probably have a drink, or he should, you know what I mean? She's just like gets in there and works. I didn't really collaborate with Michael in any type of filmmaking way besides just being like when he would get a really amazing shot, I would be so jealous. I'd be like, oh, I want that shot in my film. I love that. And I love that pan. Oh, like that kind of feeling. So I was just kind of got to sit back a lot and just watch another filmmaker work, which was so fun.
Now, we mentioned it's a huge ensemble cast. So let me kind of ask you the same sort of question in terms of the acting. I mean, it's a cliche to say everybody on set was a giant family. I got the impression that it was a very kind of warm relationship, and you are also literally playing a family. Tell me about working with some of the people like Wendy Robbie, Francis Guinan, like those folks.
Well, Wendy is the most giving actor I've ever worked with. I mean, like actors know this is like when the camera's not on you and it's on somebody else, you're doing the different perspectives. She gives you everything 100% just as if the camera was on her. She's in that moment with you and she is going to connect with you. Like whether you like it or not, she's connecting with you. And so she was incredible to watch. And then Francis, who plays my father and all of our fathers in the film, just a phenomenal actor. Just watching him work on lines, and he repeats them over and over and over until he gets the cadence he wants and they feel natural and flow out of his mouth the way he wants them to, was incredible. Honestly, like I said, it was really intimidating for me because a lot of the actors there are just such powerhouses, and they also have like theater backgrounds, and they have such presence. So I think my own shyness and anxiety worked well for Norma, who's kind of more quiet. But yeah, it was honestly like you would just sometimes it would take you out of the scene because you're just like in amazement, especially when Wendy and Francis were working together. It was just kind of like, wow, like so it was quite incredible. That is the thing I think with Michael with this film, like, he's made several films, is this is the film where everything came together. I feel like it just flows really well. The script is exactly what you see, like to a T, it's what you see. The cast and just everything. I think he just nailed it with this one, and it's rare as a filmmaker when all the pieces come together. And I think that's why Relative is really striking a chord with the audience.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it, I think 3 times in the past few months, and I'm gonna see it again on Monday. They'll bring me to our kind of wrap up segue. Very elegant. But yeah, I feel like I could talk to you for another couple hours. Unfortunately, time is not on my side, but I do want to talk to you again, when your new film is out, and anytime you want to come back on the show just to BS about anything. But I really have enjoyed being able to speak with you. And is there anything that you want to say? I've been talking a lot. I hope I haven't been monopolizing this interview, but is there anything that you want to talk about?
No, I don't think you've been talking. I feel like I've just dumped a lot on you right now, but I don't get to talk about relative too often. So thank you. It's been lovely to open up and go into depth about this and not have like a surface level conversation about the film. So I appreciate that.
Well, it's a film that brought up a lot of things from the depth for me, I think, watching it. So, congratulations on the movie. Everyone should be very proud of the work, the end result. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, After Hours Film Society is having a special screening on Monday, August 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Get the tickets and stuff down below. Emily, you'll be there. David Fowley's going to be there. I'll be there in the audience, just being able to relax and enjoy the movie and a Q&A. No pressure on me. And from what I've heard, David has said that the After Hours Film Society crowd is very engaged, very smart bunch who show up for that screening. And that's not to say that it's, a restricted screening or anything. Anybody can show up to this. It's just part of their monthly series. So definitely check it out. Michael will be there, Elizabeth, Melissa Dupre, and you, as I had mentioned many times. I'm going to wrap it up, promise. But yeah, it's very exciting stuff. So check it out, support indie film. And Emily, Mercy's Girl is on Amazon Prime, I believe, right? People can catch it if they have that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's on Amazon. It's on a few streaming services. So please check it out and let me know what you think. I love getting emails and messages on Instagram from people. So.
Is there like a Blu-ray or a home video release kind of thing for those
Yeah,
who are like physical media junkies like me?
it is on Blu-ray and DVD on Amazon as well. So.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll have to check that out. I should have added it to my cart along with the Sam Shepard book, but I was probably watching it too early.
I should
All right,
good deal and combine them together.
there, there you go. All right, Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And again, congratulations on a great career that is early, and I feel like it's just getting started. There's some great things ahead for you.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.